At a place where days and nights blend together, the work to clear a tower of rubble goes on.
And while workers search for a miracle, authorities try to track down those responsible.
And some protest in Pakistan against expected US attacks on their neighbours, Afghanistan. Hello, I'm Michael Holmes.
Welcome back. I'm Colleen McEdwards at CNN Center. This is CNN's continuing coverage of America's new war. Michael?
Yeah, well, it has been several days since a person was last pulled alive out of the rubble of what was the World Trade Center in New York City, but authorities there are refusing to give up hope. Let's go now to some live pictures of the around-the-clock rescue operations taking place. There you go. And it does blend from day into night there with those arc lights there blaring down onto the site. Officials say it's still too early to shift the efforts from rescue to recovery, and that is keeping hope alive for families and friends of nearly 5,000 people who remain missing.
An enormously important day for world financial markets. In just over 5 hours, the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ will reopen for business. Security has been heightened ahead of the opening. It is the first day back for the U.S. market since those attacks.
Yeah, and as those traders return to their jobs, other Americans are also being urged to try to return to life as it was before the attacks, as much as that is possible. US President George W. Bush says that's the only way to show the terrorists and the rest of the world that the country is strong.
We have got a job to do. Just like the farmers and ranchers and business owners and factory workers have a job to do, my administration has a job to do. And we're going to do it. We will rid the world of the evildoers.
The investigation into Tuesday's attacks is being called the largest in US history, taking agents across the country and the globe. On Sunday, the FBI searched apartments in both Florida and also in New Jersey. They say those apartments have ties to either suspected hijackers or accomplices. Now, in another development we'd like to bring to you, 2 new arrest warrants have been issued for material witnesses. Mike Betcher has more on that.
The FBI was back at this apartment house in South Florida, taking away evidence. It's believed to be the residence of Saeed Al-Ghamdi, one of the suspected hijackers on United Flight 93. At least one other hijacker on the same flight may have lived in the same building. All over the country, leads are being pursued. 2 more arrests for material witnesses were issued. 2 people are already in custody. And in New Jersey, just across the river from New York, another apartment was searched. This one was the residence of one, possibly both men, picked up off an Amtrak train allegedly carrying cash, airline tickets, and box cutters. But the top of the most wanted list has not changed and will not, according to U.S. officials. But the effort to add suspect names after Osama bin Laden is accelerating both in the U.S. and internationally.
He headed it up and organized it, but it's a very broad, kind of loose coalition of groupings. It includes not only his forces, but it also includes, for example, Islamic Jihad from Egypt.
Members of Egyptian Islamic Jihad filled the top ranks of bin Laden's al-Qaeda organization. Islamic Jihad's leader, Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, was at bin Laden's side during this 1998 press conference. Widely considered bin Laden's chief lieutenant, Zawahiri is also his personal doctor. Like bin Laden, he's believed to be in Afghanistan. Bin Laden denied he was responsible in a statement released Sunday through an Arabic-language satellite news channel. As for me, I have been living in the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan and following its leader's rules, he said. The current leader does not allow me to exercise such operations.
He's a prime suspect, but we have to be realistic. This is not a person. That's the problem. It is a whole host of people and a whole host of countries that are harboring those people.
The head U.S. officials are sure of, bin Laden, but hidden under the cloak of al-Qaeda's mastermind, a complex organization, harder to identify, and just as their leader, elusive. Mike Betcher, CNN, Atlanta.
And as the investigation zeroes in on Osama bin Laden, a high-level Pakistani delegation has arrived in Afghanistan with a message from Washington. It wants Afghanistan's ruling Taliban to hand over bin Laden. the U.S. chief suspect in the attacks. And joining us now, Mike Chinoy, who is in Islamabad with the very latest there. Mike, what can you tell us about the status of this delegation at this point?
Colleen, the Pakistani delegation is now in the southern Afghan city of Kandahar. That's normally the residence of Mullah Omar, who is the leader of the Taliban. The Pakistani delegation is headed by General Mahmoud. He's the chief of the ISI, Pakistan's military intelligence. This is the organization which, over the past half dozen years or so, has been a strong supporter of the Taliban, helped to put the Taliban in power and keep it in power in Afghanistan. He will be carrying a message from Pakistan's president urging the Taliban to turn Osama bin Laden over to the United States or else risk very, very grave consequences. Pakistani officials are not describing it as an ultimatum, and they say there's no specific timetable. The Pakistani delegation is expected back here in Islamabad at the end of the day on Monday. But Pakistan's foreign minister said that Pakistan, in fact, has limited influence with the Taliban.
Well, Pakistan has always sought to give correct counsel. We have always emphasized in the past that it is important for Afghanistan and its people that the government should act in conformity with international law. Of course, the assumption that Pakistan is in a position to exercise complete influence is flawed in our opinion. We have constantly pointed out to our friends that we have diplomatic relations, but that doesn't necessarily translate into great influence.
In fact, the nature of the bin Laden organization is a complex one. He has recruited over the years soldiers from many Arab countries, from the Gulf, who've used the wild and chaotic conditions in Afghanistan and the tolerance of the Taliban to have training bases and to plan and develop operations. In fact, some analysts believe that bin Laden's own forces are powerful enough that it would be difficult for the Taliban to turn him over, even if the Taliban wanted to do so. There is no indication at this point that the Taliban intends to heed Pakistan's call. Meanwhile, we are hearing that at some point in the next few days, a high-level interagency delegation from the United States, consisting of military officials, intelligence officials, diplomats, will be coming here to Islamabad for further discussions as Pakistan seeks to further develop its cooperation with the United States.
The discussions that we have held with the government of the United States deal with principles in general. Pakistan will extend full cooperation in the fight against terrorism. As for the specifics, we expect consultations, and we understand from the news that a group of high-level officials from the United States will be visiting Pakistan in the near future. We would like also to know the plan that the United States has in mind, and then we will discuss what and to what extent Pakistan can be a partner in the fight against terrorism.
One of the key areas of cooperation is likely to be intelligence. Pakistan's military intelligence service, the ISI, as I said, has had a long-standing relationship with the Taliban, and its leaders and members are likely to be very well-versed as anyone outside Afghanistan in how the Taliban leadership operates, its movements, its communications, and that kind of intelligence would be great value to the United States. There's also been talk about Pakistan allowing U.S. planes to overfly Pakistani airspace, perhaps prepositioning equipment here on the ground, maybe even putting U.S. troops on the ground. However, there has been a vocal chorus of criticism of the government's decision to side with the U.S., that criticism coming particularly from opposition parties and Islamic fundamentalist groups. On Sunday, there were demonstrations in several Pakistani cities. In a few hours' time, an organization called the Afghan Defense Council will be meeting in the city of Lahore to plot its strategy. There is a large reservoir of sympathy in this overwhelmingly Islamic nation for the neighboring Islamic nation of Afghanistan. Among Pakistan's Islamic fundamentalist groups, there have been some who have sought to turn Pakistan into a Taliban-style religious state. There's a great deal of cross-fertilization, religious schools here sending Pakistanis to fight with the Taliban in Afghanistan and then coming back. So the government does have a real challenge on its hands. President Musharraf spoke with Pakistani journalists on Sunday, said that he was well prepared to deal with this kind of challenge, but there is every expectation if the U.S. does launch military strikes that there will be a sharp response from at least some segments of the Pakistani population. Colleen?
Mike Chinoy, thanks very much. As we heard in Mike's segment there from Pakistan's foreign minister, he said Islamabad will help the United States despite concerns for difficulties that this will cause at home. I want to spend a little bit of time here on this. We're joined now from London by Abdul Qadir Jaffer, Pakistan's High Commissioner to Britain. A good chance to follow up on some of this. Mr. Jaffer, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, madam.
Okay,
it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. This delegation is there, but we're hearing expectations being downplayed a little bit from the foreign minister. Tell us what to expect. Does anyone really expect the Taliban to be able to hand over Osama bin Laden?
Well, I agree with you. We have embarked on a very difficult and a very important assignment, and that is truly to support the United States government and the world at large to eradicate this menace from all countries of the world. And if we can be successful in getting Osama bin Laden, I'm sure it will be a great cooperation from Pakistan, as we have always done in the past. We have always rendered assistance and cooperation to the United States of America.
Well, Mr. Jaffer, what happens if the Taliban will not hand him over?
Well, I suppose we'll have to again discuss this matter with the United States and see what other options we have. But most important, I think the effort has got to continue so that there is no loss of further innocent lives. I think this is extremely important. And I think this exercise which we have now undertaken is to see that if we are able to convince the Taliban of the gravity of the situation, I think it will be a great success.
Well, and what else is Pakistan prepared to do?
Well, Pakistan has agreed to provide all support, unstinted support, because we have been a victim of terrorism ourselves. You must have heard we have lost a lot of people in the recent past. Only a few months ago, we lost the chairman of Pakistan State Oil. So this happens in Pakistan too. But
how far are you willing to go? Sorry for interrupting, but what specifically does that mean? I mean, in your areas of intelligence gathering, for example, will you share that information?
This is for both the government to decide. As you have heard from the foreign minister, there is a delegation expected from the United States officials, and I'm sure they will have further discussions and decide how best to assist the United States to resolve this issue, and no further lives are lost, innocent lives are lost.
You know, I
think this is the most important concern of everyone.
We've been hearing a lot and talking a lot about the difficulty this presents for Pakistan at home, the very fact that cooperation with the U.S. could destabilize the government there.
It is a very delicate situation for Pakistan, but I think a decision has been taken. Corps commanders and the general met yesterday. There was a meeting also of the cabinet, so it just shows the seriousness and then the importance the government of Pakistan attaches to this matter and to this problem.
Well, is it possible that the U.S. is asking too much of Pakistan?
Well, this is a problem which faces the world. I don't think the United States government is asking Pakistan too much. I think we need to eradicate this menace. It is the responsibility of everyone in the world today to stop this happening. It may happen anywhere. And look at the amount of innocent lives lost. We should not encourage this. We should discourage this. And I am sure the Taliban realize the gravity of the situation. I'm sure they also want to eradicate this.
They're fine words at the diplomatic level and words that one might expect, but if things were to get dicey at home, if there were to be instability, if there were to be opposition, how far is Pakistan prepared to go in this support?
Well, the president has already started talking to the members of the opposition, all political parties and the media. He's trying to arrive at a consensus to see to what extent, to what maximum extent can we support the exercise we have now started and undertaken.
And what might Pakistan want in return from the United States?
Well, this is for both the government to decide. I think most important for us all is to try and resolve this sad and tragic issue. I mean, I think it's a terrible tragedy which has befallen on the Americans. We share their grief, we share their sorrow.
Abdul Qadir Jaffer, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, madam.
Michael.
Thank you. Thank you.
Interesting stuff there. Well, US President George W. Bush is urging Americans to resume their daily routines and go back to work. For his part, the president gets back to the job on Monday when he meets with his economic team to monitor the reopening of the US stock markets. OK, Major Garrett is going to join us now from Washington with the very latest. Major.
Hey, Major.
Michael, in the early morning hours here Monday morning, a very important day ahead for the Bush White House as it, of course, continues to work diplomatic channels, review military options, and also attempt to signal to the entire U.S. economy and the entire American population now is time to get back to work, to get back to some of the basic routines in this country that were shattered by Tuesday's terroristic attacks. On Sunday, it was a day of prayer for the president in addition to meetings with his national security team. He went to private church services at Camp David, the presidential retreat in Maryland. Then he returned to the White House with First Lady Laura Bush. And upon his arrival in the South Lawn of the White House, came to the microphone to tell the American public that, yes, Monday was a very important day, a transition point to moving back to some sense of normality.
Today, millions of Americans mourned and prayed, and tomorrow we go back to work. Today, people from all walks of life gave thanks for the heroes. They mourned the dead. They asked for God's good graces on the families who mourn. And tomorrow, the good people of America go back to their shops, their fields, American factories, and go back to work. Our nation was horrified, but it's not going to be terrorized. We're a great nation. We're a nation of resolve. We're a nation that can't be cowed by evildoers. I got great faith in the American people. If the American people had seen what I had seen in New York City, you'd have great faith too.
A fascinating reference there, Michael, by the president. If you'd seen what I'd seen in New York, you'd have great faith, too. Let me show you a picture the White House recently released while the president was in New York City. He was touring Jacob Javits Center, meeting with family members of those firefighters and police officers who died in the downing or the crushing of the World Trade Center towers. This is not the photo that I wanted to show you. In fact, it is in the photo that I did want to show you. It's a photo of the president consoling a woman named Arlene Howard. She was in the Jacob Javits Center, and when the president came to talk with her and shake her hand, she gave the president a cherished memento. It was the badge of her son, a Port Authority police officer. His name was George Howard. He was killed in responding to the catastrophe at the World Trade Center towers. Of course, the World Trade Center is operated by the New York Port Authority. The president spent 3 hours in the Jacob Javits Center meeting with these families of firefighters and police officers. He was only scheduled to be there for about an hour and a half. He stayed an extra hour and a half to console each and every family member. Several senior White House aides simply could not bear the grief in that room. They had to step out. They could not handle it. It was too emotionally racking for them. But the president stayed each and every minute. And senior White House advisors say after that, the president was steeled with a sense that he must act in ways appropriate to relieve those families, at least in some small way, of their grief and be confident in leading the United States so that they know, however this eventual conflict with terrorism comes out, that their family members did not die in vain. Michael?
An emotional moment there, no doubt. Major, just before I let you go, the president's plans tomorrow, as you say, it's get back to work time. One assumes he'll be talking economics tomorrow. The stock market in the United States opens in just a little over 5 hours from now. Some people think the US is already in recession. Any talks planned?
Well, of course, all of us here on the overnight shift have to keep our tomorrows and todays straight. We're already in today land. The president will be getting up and getting in the Oval Office very shortly, in about 3 hours. He's always an early riser. Meeting with his economic team. That'll be the first formal meeting with his economic team, though no doubt the president has been in touch with his economic advisors throughout. Senior White House advisors have been reluctant to talk openly about the underlying economic effects of this catastrophe, feeling it's just far too crass to talk about dollars and cents at a time of such great tragedy and grief. But there is clearly a sense of wariness about how this will all affect the U.S. economy, which was struggling to regain its footing even before this. There are profound effects on a couple of major U.S. industries, the airline, Boeing, a major airline manufacturer, the insurance industry, and just the overall sense of consumer confidence. The president throughout the week will be trying to send reassuring signals to the American public that it's okay to get back to ordinary life, it's okay to spend, don't feel guilty about things such as that. But he'll also be working with Congress on maybe a tax cut package, maybe some extra spending for some particular relief efforts. All those things are on the table. But first and foremost, the president just wants to reassure the American public and try to get back within their mindsets a degree of confidence, short term and long term, about the U.S. economy. Michael?
All right, Major. Thanks very much. Major Garrett there, as always, in Washington. Colleen.
All right, Michael, thanks. Although many New Yorkers getting ready to go back to work, some are still waiting for news of colleagues, friends, or family members who are still missing. Rescue workers are searching through the night, as they do every night, for any signs of life. For more on what's going on in New York right now, let's go over to Alessio Vinci. Alessio?
Well, hello, Colleen. It's well past 4 a.m. in the morning here, and there is still a lot of activity surrounding the site where the two towers crashed. We just saw a couple of fire trucks passing by, police department vehicles. We're seeing another trucks coming by. It's really going full swing. Those rescue workers are working 24 hours a day, each doing 12 hours a shift. As you can see from these pictures live behind me, the building and the area where the two towers and the other building of the World Trade Center collapse are still a big pile of rubble, a lot of work to do for the rescue workers. And as you can also see, it is still smoldering. The twisted metal and the concrete is extremely hot, and it's making the rescue operation, of course, extremely difficult. However, the rescue operations and the rescue workers have not given up hope in trying to find somebody alive. They have been cheered by the people throughout the streets of New York. We have seen earlier as a group of firefighters walked away from the site, being cheered by this crowd of people, really trying to give them the energy to continue and excavate throughout this debris in order to be able to find some of the survivors. Mayor Giuliani saying that they're still having hope. However, many of the bodies that were inside the two towers may never be recovered. Back to you, Colleen.
Alessio, I saw some shots earlier sort of that looked down into that crater, and I saw ladders that looked like they had actually been strung together, and the fire officials and the rescue workers sort of moving very deliberately down those ladders. The conditions they face in there, despite the relatively good weather that they've had, the conditions must be awfully difficult.
They're awful, Colleen. It's wet, it's hot, it's stinky. It's really very difficult for those firefighters to crawl inside the lower levels of the World Trade Center. They're doing this because they really hope that perhaps underneath the levels, beneath the World Trade Center, still some people may be alive. There were 7 levels underneath the Trade Center. There was shopping malls there. There was the subway station there. There are some shops with food, and perhaps possibly, conceivably, if somebody is still there alive, he would have access to water and food. And there was a faint possibility that inside that hole, perhaps one of the 5,000 people missing may still be alive, and therefore the rescue workers are doing all they can to go deep, deep, deep underneath the earth to be able to pull somebody out alive.
Well, and do you get any sense, I mean, I know you are where you are, do they give you any sense of how close the operation is to getting to that level?
I understood from one person who is talking to a fireman, who's a family member, who's a fireman working on the site, that they have already managed to reach some of the levels underneath the World Trade Center. How deep they went, I don't know. I know that they have already been able to go a little bit deeper, because we have seen from the pictures, those aerial pictures, that they were really crawling underneath the surface of the earth. So certainly they are getting down there. However, as you can see also from the pictures that we have provided to you earlier, there are aerials, there is an incredible amount of damage. Not just the two towers collapsed, but as much as 7 buildings, the entire World Trade Center. So there are still a lot of work to do. So far, 20,000 tons of debris has been removed. One rescue official telling us that as much as 500,000 tons of debris will have to be removed eventually. That's a staggering number, and the rescue official is telling us that it will take at least 2 months to get rid of it.
Staggering indeed. Alessio Vinci, thanks very much for that update. Michael?
Thanks, Colleen. Well, as we've been saying, New York Stock Exchange is reopened in just a few hours from now, about 5 hours in fact, for the first time since the attack. Security, as you might imagine, is high around Wall Street. Trading was suspended for 4 days last week, the longest halt since at least the Great Depression. Over the weekend, officials and traders tested equipment, reconnected phones and tried to make sure it is safe for workers to return. Obviously a priority. Well, European markets have been up and running for more than an hour. Let's see what they're doing ahead of Wall Street's open.
Yeah, that's right. For that, we're joined by Richard Quest, who is in London with details, keeping a close eye on all of this for us. Richard, how's it looking now?
Good morning. It's 10:30 across Central Europe, 9:30 in the UK. And Europe's main stock markets are all sharply lower. There are, of course, worries about what will happen when Wall Street opens later this Monday. Taking a look at the numbers as they appear to us at the moment, all the major indices had been pretty much up and then down a bit. London's FTSE is now off 59 points. The Frankfurt DAX down 88, Paris down 95. Interestingly, that market had been up at the open. The Zurich SMI is down 115, the largest losses being seen in Switzerland, and that's because, of course, Swissair, which is seen a 15% reduction in its share value, is taking that market with it. But in 5 hours' time, the US markets open after the longest delay of trading since the Depression in the 1930s. And investors are bracing themselves for intense uncertainty. Some expect a patriotic rally. Others expect the market to fall. But analysts believe it'll be some time before we really know what's happening in the market.
It's going to be more of a symbolic opening than an actual opening today. I think volumes are likely to be less than some analysts are forecasting. This isn't the climate, I think, for mature, sensible investors to rush into investment decisions. There are just too many uncertainties, and I think there's going to be a wait-and-see attitude on behalf of many of the fund managers.
Todd Benjamin, our financial editor, joins us to give us some perspective. A patriotic rally, the potential for that. Basically, people going into the market to buy, a bit like in the 1920s with Rockefeller and Morgan.
Well, there's a lot of speculation about that, Richard, but I think the market's certainly going to open lower because of the events of last week and the way that both the European and Asian markets have reacted. Even if there is a patriotic rally, it'd probably be more on behalf of small retail investors and large institutions, although we know several companies have announced they're going to have share buybacks.
Is there more work for the central bank, the Fed, to do?
Absolutely. I mean, the Fed has been doing a yeoman's job, as it does in these times of great uncertainty. It injected massive amounts of liquidity into the market last week, some $80 billion worth. There's speculation that they will actually make an interest rate cut, possibly as soon as today, but that is conjecture.
Todd, briefly, you've been talking to the European markets this morning and the fund managers and finding out what's been happening. Is it just wait and see?
Well, I think it's very much wait and see. There's a lot of nervousness out there. It's reflected in the numbers you just gave on the European markets. They were trounced last week, and trading is very thin, and so the downside is exacerbated. But everybody is looking to New York. Psychologically, it is the biggest market, and financially, it's the biggest.
Todd, many thanks indeed. You can see exactly why New York's nervousness is causing unease in the rest of the world's markets. The tragedy's effect on corporate America is grim. Continental Airlines, for instance, says the industry's been losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day following the attack. Indeed, some airlines face bankruptcy. A number of other US corporations are expected to announce serious financial problems as a result of the attack. General Electric, Ford, Delta Airlines have issued profit warnings on Friday that were linked to the devastation. That number is expected to increase enormously. Insurance companies are expected to pay out hundreds of millions of dollars. Those are already offering profits warnings and losses. And finally, perhaps the crux of this economic side of the story, consumer confidence is going to be severely dented. That could take an enormous chunk out of the retail sector. Putting it bluntly, who wants to go out shopping at a time like this? Asia is wrapping up its trading day. Let's get all the market details. Andrew Stevens stands by in our Hong Kong bureau. Andrew, with New York almost ready to go, how did Asia fare?
Well, certainly no hints or no expectations here, Richard, of anything like a patriotic rally. Across the board, it was another big sell-off in Asia. Wall Street's reopening is weighing very much on the minds of investors here. Most people preparing for what they expect will be a big sell-off. It's not just the financial markets either, as you were saying. The economy is weighing heavy here in Asia. The threat of a recession in the United States also putting extra pressure on markets here in Asia that have already been weak for months.
It's going to be the North Asian markets which are probably the most vulnerable because they are most dependent on US trade. So it's markets which have high export dependencies into the US which are probably going to take the most of the direct brunt of it. But largely this was the position beforehand. It's just more so now. It was markets that had high-tech dependence, high-tech weightings that were potentially most vulnerable. And I think the same goes through now.
Well, most of the markets have already closed here in Asia. Just a few markets still open for the last few minutes of trade. Let's start with the numbers in Tokyo. Nikkei extending last week's 5% decline, closing at a new 17-year low on Monday. The average falling another 5%, closing just above that 9,500-point level. In Seoul, South Korea, the Kospi was down 2.8%, its lowest close since December 1998. The tech-heavy KOSDAQ down 8%, as hopes there fade for any sort of recovery in the global IT sector. Australia's S&P ASX 200 down 4.7%. It's at a 17-month low as investors priced in a fall of as much as 10% in New York when trading there resumes. Here in Hong Kong, where trading has just finished, the Hang Seng Index down more than 3%. Hong Kong's dominant carrier, Cathay Pacific Airways, not surprisingly among the worst hit of the blue chips in Hong Kong, down 10% on the day. Throughout Asia, in fact, other airline stocks also suffering sharp declines, including Korean Air and Japan Airlines. Well, all major Asian stock markets did fall deeply ahead of New York's reopening, the airline and insurance stocks taking the biggest falls. And Richard, they are the big movers so far today, and we'll of course be watching this. Asia will be reacting to Wall Street's open in about 12 hours from now.
Many thanks indeed, Andrew Stevens in Hong Kong. Before I leave you, Michael and Colleen, perhaps in these moments of financial grimness, a point of interest. Warren Buffett, one of America's largest and most profitable investors, says he won't be a seller when the market opens on Monday. In fact, Mr. Buffett says if prices fall far enough, he might even go into the market as a buyer. A note of optimism to leave you with. Michael, Colleen in Atlanta.
You'd think he'd have a rough idea, wouldn't you, Richard? Thanks. OK, now let's bring you up to date on the latest developments. Rescue efforts continuing in New York City. Around 5,000 people are missing following Tuesday's attacks. Many of the missing now, of course, feared dead. But rescuers say they are not ready to call the operation off, the rescue operation, that is. They say there is still a possibility that some people somewhere might be buried alive. And that is keeping the hope alive for thousands of friends and families waiting to hear from and about their missing loved ones. Meanwhile, people across the country, in fact across the world, packing churches and holding candlelight vigils over the weekend to mourn the victims. OK, meanwhile, a high-level Pakistani delegation is in Kandahar in Afghanistan with a message from the United States. Washington is giving the country's ruling Taliban 72 hours to hand over the suspected terrorist Osama bin Laden. The FBI searched apartments in Florida and New Jersey, meanwhile, on Sunday. They say those apartments have ties to either the suspected hijackers or their accomplices. Also, we should tell you that 2 new arrest warrants have been issued for so-called material witnesses. Colleen.
All right, Michael, we want to take you now to the Pentagon to show you what's happening there. We've got Mark Potter there, the wee hours of the morning here in the United States. Mark, what's going on?
Well, good morning, Colleen. U.S. officials say the new war on terrorism will not be a conventional war where you have large armies and navies fighting over territory. Instead, they say it will have many aspects and will feature intelligence gathering and unconventional military tactics. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld says that the attempt to root out the terrorist organizations will not be an antiseptic war of cruise missile strikes and high-altitude bombing where Americans can stay safely out of harm's way. And he says it will not be quick.
It will take a broad, sustained effort that will have to use our diplomatic, our political, our economic, our financial strength, as well as our military strength, and unquestionably unconventional techniques. And it will take time. It's not a matter of days or weeks. It's years. It's going to take the support of the American people, and I have every confidence it'll be there.
At the Pentagon, 24 hours a day, workers are still clearing the debris and FBI agents are gathering evidence. They are being supported by a small army of volunteers. The estimated death toll is 188 people. Rebuilding the Pentagon building itself will take years and could cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Flying in from Travis Air Force Base in California were 32 military reservists, mortuary specialists to help identify the victims. President Bush has ordered the activation of 35,000 reservists to help protect the country and assist the recovery efforts. Secretary of State Colin Powell says in light of the attacks in Washington and New York, the goal of the new war on terrorism is clear.
To make sure that nothing like this happens again, and to make sure nothing like this happens again by going after the sources, the terrorist sources and those who harbor terrorist activities and terrorist groups, and destroying those networks, those groups, and making sure it is no longer in anyone's interest to harbor or provide haven for such groups.
Now, the Pentagon is not revealing any of its specific plans, but it warns Americans to brace for a long, drawn-out, unconventional war on terrorism. Colleen?
Mark Potter at the Pentagon, thanks very much. Michael?
Okay, the US war against terrorism is drawing some fault lines around the world. Not surprisingly, Pakistan's President Pervez Musharraf is facing fire at home for pledging to support the US in its war against terrorism. This could pit Islamabad against Taliban rulers in neighbouring Afghanistan. The Taliban have refused to hand over chief suspect in Tuesday's attacks, Osama bin Laden. Now, a high-level Pakistani delegation is in Kandahar in Afghanistan. They're bearing a message from Washington demanding the Taliban reverse its position. Now, on Sunday, Islamic fundamentalists waged protests in Pakistan in support of the Taliban. Demonstrators say they will fight, quote, shoulder to shoulder, unquote, with the Afghans in the event of a US attack. Well, on the streets of Afghanistan, a feeling that US wrath is closing in on the troubled people. Nick Robertson reports on how Afghans view the crisis in the United States from their ever-growing isolation.
Bustling trade in Afghanistan's street markets belies an impending sense of isolation beginning to grip many Afghans. Concerns about the likelihood of an American attack and the possibility borders with Pakistan and Iran may close have driven food prices up 10 to 15%. Concern also, Afghan people could become innocent victims. They should wait until it's clear Osama was involved, this vendor says. America shouldn't make any attack on Afghanistan, this trader says, because the Afghan people are not involved and not responsible. Many here, however, are too poor to flee the cities. 22 years of conflict has ruined infrastructure and economy alike. The years of war have also built up a resilience among many Afghans, to the point where a new attack would be a continuation of their ongoing battles. The result of Russian aggression was the breaking of Russia into 16 countries, this old man says, remembering the 1980s Soviet occupation. If America attacks us, Allah will divide America into 52 pieces. From influential tribal elders, not necessarily aligned with the Taliban, however, a call for diplomacy.
We advise the Taliban that they must discuss everything with everyone and not close the doors to negotiation.
However, the tribal elders also said if Afghanistan is attacked, they will back the Taliban to the end, a sentiment echoed on the streets here. As the last of the international aid workers began leaving because the Taliban said they could no longer guarantee their safety, Afghanistan's total isolation appears now closer than ever. Nick Robertson, CNN, Kabul, Afghanistan.
Well, Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi, has warned the United States that it risks getting dragged into a Soviet-style quagmire if it commits ground troops to Afghanistan. Mr. Gaddafi, a frequent critic of the United States, says Washington has the right to respond militarily to Tuesday's attacks, but he's called for US President George W. Bush to show restraint in the fight against terrorism.
To Germany now, where more than 500 firefighters marched through Berlin on Sunday in memory of their dead U.S. colleagues. Starting at the German capital's City Hall, they walked to the U.S. Embassy where they laid flowers and a wreath. More than 300 New York firefighters still missing after Tuesday's attacks. Many are believed to have been killed when the two World Trade Center towers collapsed. A prayer service Sunday in Morocco included people of the Muslim, Jewish, and Christian faiths. The memorial service at the Great Cathedral of Rabat honored victims of the attacks in the United States. The U.S. ambassador in Morocco, Margaret Tutwiler, has thanked the Moroccan people for their messages of sympathy. The U.S. diplomat also praised King Mohammed VI for joining Mr. Bush in his condemnation of international terrorism. And in Cuba now, moved by Tuesday's terrorist attack, Cubans joined with diplomats from across the world to commemorate the victims. At a memorial mass in Havana Cathedral, Cardinal Jaime Ortega urged leaders not to respond to last week's atrocities, warning that that would lead to what he called a spiral of vengeance. A U.S. diplomat attending the service expressed his gratitude to Cubans for their support. And back in the United States on Sunday, thousands of people turned out to a candlelight vigil, this one held in Miami. It was one of two memorial services taking place in the greater Miami area. It was organized by city officials and locals who've been just so moved by recent events, like so many. Michael.
Absolutely. Well, New Yorkers are also taking time to mourn, even as they keep up hope. Rescue efforts have been going on, as we've been reporting non-stop, of course, since Tuesday's attack. Let's go back to Alessio Vinci now, who's been in New York City in these wee small hours. Alessio, what have you got for us?
Well, Michael, one thing I knew about New York is that it was a town that never sleeps, and then we have a proof of that here on the ground where the two towers of the World Trade Center collapsed. The rescue operation is in real full swing. Officials here continue to call it a search and rescue operation because they believe that some people may still be alive underneath that rubble. The rescue operation has been going on now for over 6 days. The 20,000 tons of debris has been removed from the site so far, but rescue officials are telling us that as many as 500,000 tons of debris will be removed from the site. It is a staggering number of debris. Now, most of the rescue workers with whom we have talked to are extremely frustrated, especially because so far what they have been able to dig out of the rubble is mainly either bodies or parts of bodies, but no survivor. But today we were able to speak to one survivor, one police officer who was inside one of the two towers which collapsed after being hit by the hijacked planes. And this police officer, talking to one of our reporters, basically offered some words of encouragement to the rescue workers and told them not to give up.
I'm here today, and I'm here to tell everybody, especially the rescuers, that I know that they haven't found anybody in a while, and that you can survive something like this, and I'm living proof of that. If that helps you to keep going, then I've done my job today.
Well, to give you a better sense about the magnitude of the disaster, these aerial pictures that we shot earlier today, or earlier yesterday, I should say, can tell you how big and the devastation is. 7 buildings collapsed. The two towers, of course, the World Trade Center, but also the other 5 buildings surrounding the areas. And of course, there are other buildings around the World Trade Center who remain unstable. We understand from engineers here that they are looking very closely at those buildings. Once the rubble has been removed completely from the site, eventually those buildings will have to be turned down as well. Back to you, Michael.
All right, Alessio Vinci in New York. Those aerial pictures are extraordinary. Somehow makes it all look that much bigger. Thanks, Alessio. Colleen.
New York's Mayor Rudy Giuliani is widely seen as having shown impressive courage and leadership after these attacks. Even his political enemies say that he's done much to help the city through possibly its most difficult period ever. And now, as CNN's Candy Crowley reports, he's trying to get New Yorkers to believe that happier times may eventually be possible.
Sunday, the mayor of New York put a smile on his face, a tux on his back, and escorted a Brooklyn bride down the aisle. He was making good on a promise he made several weeks ago to the mother of the bride, who told him she had lost a son, a husband, and a father within the last year.
I asked her how she can bear it, and she said because she feels the pain of it, she allows the pain to happen, but then she focuses on the good things that are left in life, like her daughter's wedding. And that's what you have to do, she said. You have to focus on the good things in life.
For a city that's endured 5 days of bottomless grief and endless agony, focus on a good thing seemed like the right thing. But then Rudy Giuliani's been doing a lot of things right.
He's such a strong man. I think he carries everybody with his strength.
There are rays for his honor in nearly every corner of this vast, aching city. They applaud as he walks by now, a salute for a guy who seems never to sleep and nearly always to know the answer.
Basically, what the medical examiner needs are toothbrush, hairbrush, items, personal items that would contain cells, hairs that you can use to do DNA analysis.
He's giving the public information as he gets it. He seems to be very thorough and on top of things.
Within hours of the Twin Tower attacks, Giuliani had twice addressed his city, shaken but steady, with a gut instinct for what needed saying.
He asked the people of New York City to do everything that they can to cooperate, not to be frightened, to go about their lives as normal. Everything is safe right now in the city.
He has really just been an inspiration of leadership and of stability and made us all remain calm and comfortable here.
Term limited, the mayor is in his final months. After 7.5 years, his exit has been, to now, singularly ungraceful. Captured fairly efficiently in a short exchange with the press last June over questions about a messy private life.
Don't be a jerk. Thank you. I said don't be a jerk.
Tenderness, caring, and empathy have not been hallmarks of his tenure until September 11th.
And people should know that they're not alone, that there are a lot of people suffering with them, there to help them and support them.
He's comes across very, very caring and very sympathetic, and he's very sincere. And very sincere, and he's very certain.
He has been known as a mayor who made the city work with a tough, no-nonsense approach. Criticized as combative and uncompromising, this week he was praised for it.
One of the best things they can do to show how strong we are and how terrorists can't cower us is not to be coward.
For a city like New York, we need a tough mayor like him, no matter how you look at it.
Politically, Governor George Pataki and Mayor Giuliani have never cared much for each other, but they have bonded over their care for this city.
For our governor and our mayor for being with us at every step along the way.
You would not be surprised to know that on the street they're saying they wish Giuliani could run for mayor again now. And perhaps he will run for something again soon. But whatever happens, this much remains. In New York's worst hour, Rudy Giuliani gave his best. When his city was in danger of crumbling, Rudy was a rock. Candy Crowley, CNN, New York.
Well, for many who survived last week's attacks, the ordeal did not end with an escape from fiery buildings. Dr. Sanjay Gupta reports on the burn victims from the attacks, and please be advised this report does contain some fairly graphic images.
Fireballs in hallways with nowhere to turn, temperatures soaring to 1,000 degrees, and burns worse than you've ever seen before.
All of a sudden, as I'm walking in the hallway, I hear a door explode, and just this big ball of fire just engulfed me. I just froze. I didn't do anything. I just stood there.
Just stood there because he instantaneously sustained burns over 40% of his body when a fireball tore through the 83rd floor of the World Trade Center's Tower 1.
It must be 1,000 degrees or more. It takes about 1 second of temperature at 155 degrees to get a third-degree burn.
I ran into my office and screaming, I'm burnt, there's a bomb.
All of a sudden the door, just flew open, and so I just ran and with the fire chasing my back, and I fall down.
The fireball on the 73rd floor of Tower 1 then passed over Vasana Mututano. It burned the flesh over her entire back and legs.
I was very fortunate. I was in the back of the elevator. Anybody in front of me, either kill, no leg, no face. It was just disgusting. I tried to help her, but then I couldn't hold on to her. So I tried to do it. But then I couldn't cross all those bodies. Okay.
We found them, some of the last ones out of the World Trade Center.
Because I made it out with a nick of time. Within 5 minutes, I think the whole building collapsed. And I think I'm lucky because I think I'm the last one out.
They are alive, but at great cost. They sustained nearly indescribable injuries.
We had a patient with 100% burn, total body, all third-degree burn. What was more shocking was seeing so many with big burns at the same time.
Many of the victims of Tuesday's attack probably didn't know the largest burn center in the country was just down the road.
I never known that there is such a place called burning unit before.
But now they credit Weill Cornell Burn Center and Dr. Roger Yurt with saving their lives, though he regrets the one that he couldn't save.
There's a possibility that a patient with 100% burn could survive, but it's very remote.
That patient
did not survive.
Many of the patients that did survive did so because of remarkable heroism.
Somebody from the building maintenance, I'm sure, they came up and they said, we have to evacuate, we have to evacuate. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get down? You know, all my arms are burnt, my back is burnt, face, and some of my friends, they're like, when you have to get up, you have to get up. You know, there's nobody here, you have to get up. So I don't know how, I just jumped up and just started running down the stairs, and people were very nice. They saw that I was burned and they let me go in front of them.
Now they consider themselves lucky and grateful.
All the doctors and nurses with international faces around here, they're very kind to me. They don't even know me.
I'm just fortunate to be here right now.
But that luck comes at a price.
I'm very, very, very lucky. But any of my friend who's up in the 78th floor, either they got crushed or on the way down to the stair, they were made.
Ling Young lost all of her co-workers that day except for one, her best friend. Together they escaped, though they encountered separate fires along the way and made it to ground just in time.
She said, I can't breathe, I gotta get the hell out of here. And they said, no, we gotta wait for one more. She said, if you don't let me get out of here, I'm not gonna be able to make it. Finally, the EMS said, okay, let's go. After we turned around the corner, the whole building collapsed on us.
Surviving the attack took minutes. Surviving their burns may take months, but their traumatic memories will last a lifetime. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN, New York.
Those are the victims in New York and in the Pentagon. Pentagon officials confirmed on Sunday that another victim has been identified there. Commander Dan Shanoner of Naperville, Illinois, is the second confirmed casualty of the Pentagon attack. This out of 88 remains that have been recovered so far. Remains are being transported to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware for DNA testing. The Pentagon death toll still stands at 188. Well, for the families of those believed buried in the rubble of the Pentagon attack, the identification process can't go fast enough. Bob Franken talked to one family just waiting for a miracle.
So many of the strategic decisions about how to wage war have been made within the walls of this massive five-sided building. But now a new kind of war has arrived at the Pentagon. A plane piloted by hijackers shattered a section of the nation's military nerve center and shattered hundreds of lives.
The head of our family is gone, and our lives will never be the same.
Every day since the crash, Teresa Russell and her large family meet at a hotel near the Pentagon, wait for word from the Defense Department. Robert Russell, a budget analyst and Teresa's husband of 30 years, is buried somewhere near his office, right where the 757 crashed through the wall.
Although we haven't given up hope, we have to face the reality. that he may not come back, you know.
In fact, Robert Russell's section of the Pentagon had just been remodeled, reinforced, so reinforced that many people near the site of the crash escaped. Navy Petty Officer Charles Lewis was rushed to the hospital and treated for smoke inhalation. He was able to get out.
The wall was like Swiss cheese where we were at, and I mean, we could hear people yelling at us. We were yelling back, trying to bang and beat on stuff, letting them know where we were at.
But Teresa Russell, her children and grandchildren have heard nothing yet about Robert Russell, so they gain strength from each other to deal with their variety of feelings.
Sad. Wish he could come back. That wasn't fair. Don't somebody's life. Life isn't fair. But we're strong. We'll be here for you. We're all together. And Granddaddy wouldn't want us to be sad, would he? Would he? No. No.
The Pentagon believes the death toll will reach 188. But until they know for sure that Robert Russell is one of them, members of his family will return to the hotel every day. Bob Franken, CNN, The Pentagon.
Well, since Tuesday's attacks, hundreds of thousands of Americans have taken to displaying the Stars and Stripes, the American flag, from their homes and their cars. People in Tucson, Arizona went one step further and formed a giant human flag. Organisers had asked for 7,900 volunteers dressed in red, white or blue. Instead, they got 15,000, twice as many.
All right, well, that's just one of the lovely gestures that we've seen go on. A reminder, just a few hours from now, the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange opens. Won't be business as usual there. There's going to be a moment of silence before the opening bell rings, a bit of a ceremony to, of course, mark the tragic events. And that's it for Michael and me. CNN's coverage of America's new war continues now with Carol Lynn and Leon Harris. They're going to come right in here and take over for us.
Yeah, let's close now as we leave with images of those mourning this week of losses.
First, I want to give us all an opportunity to thank our police officers, our firefighters, our emergency workers,
There's a line from the old professor in Tuesdays with Maury. He said if you hold back emotion, if you don't allow yourself to go all the way through them, you can't move on. By throwing yourself into these emotions, allowing yourself to dive in all the way over your head, you experience them fully and completely. You know what pain is, you know what love is, you know what grief is,